Hello, I'm Gary. Welcome to FYPC. It's my channel about my prostate cancer experience, except today it's about someone else's prostate cancer experience. I'm about to share with you an interview with Simon, who very honestly and openly tells you about everything from the moment he realized something was wrong to the moment he got the diagnosis to all the treatment that he had. So I want you to like and subscribe to the channel and also to share this video because it'll help to demystify the disease for everyone else. So let's take a look at the interview with Simon. Now, just before we start the video, I want to really make this plea to you. If you'd like to share your story, or if you know someone who you think would want to share theirs, I'm keen to interview other people for this channel as well. I just think the more stories we share, the more stories we tell, the less of a mystery this disease will be. But no more delays, let's see what Simon has to say. Thanks very much for joining us on FYPC, Simon, and for sharing your journey with us. I suppose we ought to start really at the beginning. So, thinking back to the time when you first imagined or first thought there might be something not quite right, can you take us back to that?
Yeah, look, absolutely, Gary. And first of all, thank you for having me on this as well and speaking to me. But yeah, so I guess it was sort of autumn last year, so autumn 2022,
Yeah.
when for me, how my symptoms came about was I kept wanting to go to the toilet, and what had actually happened is earlier that year I actually decided to get fitter and healthier, so I was drinking more water.
Yeah.
And initially I just thought, okay, it's just my bladder getting used to drinking more water.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it went on longer than I thought it should do, and that's when I decided to go to the doctors and just sort of find out if there was anything more behind it.
Was that just during the day, or did you find yourself getting up more during the night? What was the whole part of that?
It was actually I was getting up up to 4 times during the night,
Right.
and
Okay.
and during the day it was pretty much every hour that I was needing to go to the toilet. So it was obviously affecting my sleep and also affecting my work as well, because I'd need to excuse myself for meetings or calls to use the facilities.
Yeah, yeah. So you went to see the doctor. What was the recommended course of action from the doctor?
Well, I think it's probably good for me to give a little bit of background in that my father passed away from prostate cancer.
Okay.
I think 12 years ago now. he was only just 70, so 70 in the August, and passed away in the January. And he'd been diagnosed with it for about 8 years or so. So he lived with it and had treatment for about 8 years. So the reason I share that is that when I went to the doctor, I think that was that was on my medical records. I think that raised a bit of a flag. Look, this is something we need to investigate. Also with me, Gary, I should add to that as well, is my granddad on my mother's side died of prostate cancer, although he was in his 80s. And my uncle on my mother's side died of prostate cancer in his 70s. So there really is a sort of history in my family. So yeah, it was one of the things that I think straight away the doctor thought we need to just test for this.
Yeah, I think we talk about risk, and the risk categories are, men over 50 and men whose fathers or brothers have had prostate cancer, black men, double the risk of prostate cancer, and people who are, very overweight also, that apparently increases the risk. So you were definitely in one of the risk categories. What was the next step?
So I had a PSA test at that time, just the blood test, and that came back at 3.9. So not really high, but high enough than it should be, and high enough for somebody to say, look, we need to investigate this further.
Mm.
For me, Gary, and this may sound odd, at that stage I pretty much knew I had prostate cancer.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the history, because of the symptoms, because of the raised PSA, I just thought, no, I've yeah. So for me, the next sort of stages were really just confirming,
Yeah.
that was that was the outcome, rather than sort of me thinking, actually, no, that there's still other alternatives, which I sort of knew, but the balance of probability, if you like, was actually. So I had the PSA 3.9, and then I went for an MRI. And this happened for me. This happened really quickly. So as I say, this all happened in autumn last year. I think the MRI was in about October. The results of that came back that there were some sort of shadows, some lesions that they wanted to investigate sort of further. So then in December, I went for a biopsy.
Right.
And had the biopsy in December.
What kind of well, I was going to ask you about the biopsy, but let me ask you first about that moment when you kind of mentally confirmed that you had prostate cancer. Because one of the things that I found interesting was taking people with me on the journey. So I was really keen my PSA was 10. And I told my wife and I told my children that the fact that I had this test and it had come back way above what it should be, because I didn't want to get to some point where I'd kept everything a secret and then I would just walk in one day and go, I've got prostate cancer. What was your mental process around that as you began to sort of cement in your own mind that that's what you had?
Yeah, so the only person I shared it with at the time was my wife. She was the sort of only person that knew. I didn't share it with my children at that stage, because I guess I hadn't had that confirmation. So and then I sort of thought, well, and I'll come on to this in a bit, but whenever I've sort of communicated to people that I had prostate cancer, I've always wanted to do it in a positive way, and that sounds weird. So
me too.
So actually, with what I said to my daughters when I did tell them, which was after it had all been confirmed and I decided what treatment I was going to have, etc., is that I sort of said to them, look, I'm going to have an operation, and then explained why I was sort of having the operation, rather than communicating to them a level of doubt, if you So I just kept it to my wife, because I felt as obviously I needed to share it with somebody. But yeah, for me, that was probably at that stage, it was probably the most concerning time for me, because even though I knew my PSA wasn't very high, because I'd sort of seen my father and what he'd gone through. And as I say, this was 12 years ago, so a lot's changed since then, but there wasn't the same sort of treatments as there are now. My father did get diagnosed a lot later than I did, but particularly the last part of my father's life wasn't very pleasant. So obviously that was what was going through my head, in terms of I don't want that to happen. So that was probably one of the most sort of concerning or worrying times for me, actually not really knowing. I was having tests, but I felt as though I'm pretty sure I've got prostate cancer, but actually not knowing how advanced it was or how aggressive it was.
And I think that's interesting, because I think as I was going through the process, there was more than one person outside of my family who said to me, "Oh yeah, Uncle John had prostate cancer. He lived with it for 20 years." And I'm thinking, I don't know yet whether I've got it or not. And okay, I've shared this piece of information with you about the fact that I'm having these tests, but I think for a lot of men, there must be quite a protracted period of uncertainty, which could range from I'm not really that bothered, and the PSA level was very low, and I think this will be okay, to am I going to die? Literally, am I going to die? So I think we should make the point that If you're caring for someone who might have prostate cancer, or you're a friend of someone who might have prostate cancer, don't hijack their emotions. You know, they are going to be worried about the fact that as of now, they don't know whether this is going to be really serious or not.
Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainties, and that carries on. I'll tell you the rest of my story in a bit, but I don't think it ever goes away. The uncertainties change and things happen, but you still go through this bit of a roller coaster after you've had the treatment in terms of, well, what does what's there for the future and that sort of things. Yeah.
And there might be a lot of people, I mean, we talk about the prostate and there might be a lot of people who don't really understand what the prostate is or what it does. But the point that I've made a couple of times with people is that, if you catch it early, it's a highly survivable disease. The modern treatments are very effective. But whatever happens, it is life-changing, ultimately, as you look at the future and the impact of the treatment will have on your body.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, and you're right in what you sort of say. It's a physical thing, but actually it's how you affects you mentally as well. It's really important, and that shouldn't be underestimated about how it makes you feel, as well as the physical symptoms that you might be getting. But yeah, I think the important thing there is, as you say, is caught early. It is very, very treatable.
Yeah. I mean, my radiotherapy starts next week, and the nurse that I went to see, she said, even 10 years ago, this was a bit like using a blunderbuss, and it was a very broad shot. And 5 years ago, it was a shotgun, but today it's a sniper rifle bullet. We will target it very specifically. But I digress. Anyway, so you've got yourself lined up for a biopsy now. I think there are two kinds. I had them both. Which type did you have?
I don't know what it was called, but it was very invasive, shall we say? Yeah, look, I don't want to worry people unnecessarily that are watching this, but it wasn't pleasant. It was a means to an end. You have to go through it, but it wasn't pleasant.
So the first one I had was the transrectal ultrasound one, the trust biopsy. So the probe goes in, to the back passage, as you say, and then they stick a needle alongside the probe and go through the rectal wall into the prostate. And they didn't find anything. They were like, great news, we haven't found anything. Okay. And the doctor said to me, well, let's put it this way. She said, we've gone to the supermarket and there's a massive display of apples, and we've stuck our hand in and we've pulled out a perfect apple that looks great and it's fresh and it's sweet and it's juicy, but there are some bad apples in there. So we're going to have to go in again and have another look, because I'm pretty sure after your MRI and everything else that there's something there. So then I went back to have the transperineal biopsy, which is where the needle goes into the perineum.
Oh, that's the one I had done. Yeah.
That's the one you had. Yeah. So you'll remember the sharp scratch.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that was the one I had done, and it was a sharp scratch. Yes.
Yeah. So you get the biopsy. Did you get a positive result straight away? Was it just the one biopsy?
Yeah. So I had one biopsy. Yeah. They sort of go in about 20 times or something like that into different areas, because, like, as you say, and I think your example of the apples is a good one, is that they take samples from a number of different places. So actually, then it lessens the chance of just hitting one good apple. They're taking loads of bits from different areas, and then the chances are that if there is a bad apple in there, they're going to come across it. So I just had the one biopsy. That again was, was a worrying time in terms, because in fact that was over Christmas, because I had that in December and then was waiting for my results in January.
Oh wow!
And then I got the results back in January. I went to see the doctor, and he said, look, results have come back. You've got sort of prostate cancer, and then sort of explained more about that.
Just just pausing briefly on the biopsy, did you get any side effects or any after effects from the biopsy?
Just it was tender afterwards,
Yeah.
And initially sort of passing some blood and
Yeah.
blood clots and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But from memory, that cleared up pretty quickly. I think for a while there was a slight discoloration in my urine, sort of thing. In terms of but. Yeah, I mean, I remember going to the toilet sort of straight afterwards, and it was bright red sort of thing, and not to go into detail, but pretty lumpy, and you're like, whoa, it's, but that bit sort of cleared up pretty quickly, and then it was a bit of discoloration for a while, because it's like anything, isn't it? It's like you cut your knee, it takes a while for it to heal over and stop bleeding. And that's exactly what was happening sort of inside. It just took a while for it to heal up and stop bleeding, sort of thing. So but I had to stay off the cycling for a bit, should we say? But
yeah, that's like tenderness. Yeah,
absolutely.
So we go to January, and the doctor's telling you that you've got prostate cancer, and then presumably there was a lot of numbers and staging and Gleason and all that sort of stuff thrown at you. What were you told at that point?
So, and I think it happens, differently for everyone. So the way it happened for me is I was asked to attend the hospital to get the results of the biopsy.
Yeah.
Went into the room to see the doctor. It was one of these weird things as well, and I don't know whether this is me just imagining it, but as we went into the room, and I was with my wife, and a nurse came into the room as well.
Yeah.
And in my head, I thought, I know why she's here.
Yes.
She's here to comfort me.
Yeah.
So again, that sort of reconfirmed it for me. Now she may have come in anyway, whether the result was positive, I don't know, but that was how I read the situation.
Yeah.
And the doctor, which also sort of turned out to be the surgeon, etc. Sort of confirmed to me that I'd got prostate cancer. Said to me what stage I was at, explained about the Gleason scores and that sort of thing. Whether it spread, all those type of things, and then explained to me. Well, actually, then they gave me time for that to settle in. So I went into a different room, and I was given time for that just to sink in.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, I went back and saw the same gentleman who talked to me about different treatments. Okay. He focused on one particular treatment, and then I went into another room, spoke to a different person who spoke to me about another treatment. So they were giving me all the different.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
So, and then after that, I was given the opportunity just to think about it, digest it, and say, right, okay, which route did I want to go down, and had I got any questions?
And you mentioned that question there about, the doctor talking to you about whether it had spread or not. In my journey, there was a little bit of doubt about whether it might have spread, and I was given lots of different scans as a result. Were they confident with you that it hadn't, and therefore you didn't need to have any other kind of scan to just see if there'd been any sort of metastatic activity?
Yeah, no, I think with me, again, I'm trying to sort of think back, but I don't think they were concerned at that stage that it had spread at all. I think they were fairly confident that it was contained. I don't think they can ever be 100% sort of sure if you see what I mean, but I think they were fairly sure that it was contained within the prostate.
So in terms of treatment, I guess in line with most people who are in that kind of situation, there's the surgical removal, there's the radiotherapy with the hormone therapy. There might be something like brachytherapy where they put the seeds inside. Yeah. What were you offered, and how did you come to your choice about which one to have?
So the two primary ones I was offered was the removal. And the brachiotomy, is it, where they put the seeds?
The seed, yeah, brachytherapy, yeah.
Brachytherapy, yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so they were the two primary options that they gave me. Interesting enough, as I say, I spoke to the original guy that told me that I had prostate cancer, and he was the one that was talking to me about removal of the prostate. And then I went in to see the other gentleman about the brachytherapy, and he talked to me about it. But actually, at the end of the conversation, he said to me, "Do you know what? It's my job to promote this as a way of like treatment." He says that if I was in your shoes, I would go for the removal.
Right, that's interesting. Did he say why? I mean, because there's always this question about which treatment is most effective, isn't it? And you know, whether once you've whipped it out, that's it. But then we hear stories of people where a bit gets left behind, and so you're being given all this information. Presumably, at some point, someone's saying to you, "You've got to choose which one you want." Was that how it went?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, whilst he sort of said, you know, that it was still my decision in terms of what I wanted. So yeah, I had the ability to ask loads of questions. I was given sort of loads and loads of literature to read up on it, and people that I could contact to discuss it, etc., and just sort of find out more about it. But I think there was a number of reasons that the surgical removal was why that doctor sort of said, if I was you, I'd go for that. It was partly because of my family history, partly because of my age as well. You know, I'm 53 now. I was 52 at the time. So partly because of my age as well, and then partly because of the stage that I was at. Partly because they were reasonably confident it hadn't spread. So there was a number of different things that went into it. Ultimately, you know, I did read up on it, etc., speak to a lot of people, and I did decide to go for the removal. And you know, one of my you know, my thought process for that was, well, if it's taken out, it's gone. You know, that's it, gone, sort of thing. And the other thing as well for me is that they said, well, because you mentioned there about, they may not get it all and that sort of thing, some might be left behind. But what the doctor sort of said to me was, but if that happens, then we'll give you radiotherapy. So just to focus on the bit that was left behind, and we're going to carry on monitoring you, testing your PSA, etc. So as soon as there was a sign, right, we'd target it and then give you radiotherapy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
What they sort of also said to me, they said, but if you don't have your prostate removed, then you have the brachytherapy, and let's say that doesn't work, the prostate cancer may have advanced further, that it's too late to have your prostate removed.
Yeah.
So I sort of thought, well, and look, what I should say here is there's no right or wrong for anyone. You know, it's you take your situation, you know, your what your symptoms are, what your Gleason score is, what stage you're at, your family history. You read up on it, and you make your decision. And there's no right or wrong. It's just making what's right for you. And for me, it was, you know, I just felt the right thing was the surgical removal.
And before we talk about the surgical removal, because you said at the beginning that one of the things you really wanted to focus on was, you know, facing it with a very positive attitude. So you're in that scenario and your wife's there in the room with you and the doctor says, I can confirm, you know, that you've got prostate cancer, and you get all the rest of the information. At that point, emotionally, how are you thinking about, you know, the impact it's had on your wife? Presumably you get to tell your daughters at some point. What's the emotional situation at that point?
Well, I'll be honest. For me, I just burst out crying. Because even though I sort of said that early on that I thought, I've got prostate cancer, it was that confirmation. Yes, you have, type thing. and it was all those things that you sort of said there. You know, I'm thinking, you know, what does this mean? You know, and the doctors were actually very good because before they, well, certainly the one that spoke to me was, you know, before he told me, he didn't just come out and go, "Oh, you've got prostate cancer." It was positioned very well.
Right.
I don't know. I can't remember how he did it now, but it was very much, look, you know, it's nothing. It's, you know, you're, without actually saying that I had prostate cancer. It was like it basically told me that it was early stages and all this
Yeah.
sort of thing without actually confirming, you know,
Yeah.
that I had it. And then it was after that, so I didn't have that moment of going, so am I going to die, sort of thing, or is it really
Yeah.
advanced, or has it spread? Because it's sort of already communicated that to me in a weird way without
That's
actually
clever.
telling me I've got it. You know, I don't know quite how it done that. But yeah, you do think about, yeah, how am I going to, you know, how am I going to tell my you know, my two daughters, you know, and you know, the other person that went through my mind was, you know, my mum.
Yeah, of course.
Because she'd, you know, seen my father go through it. She'd nursed my father. Her father had died from it. Her brother had died from it. You know, so to be able to tell her,
Yeah.
Mum,
Gosh.
you know, this is what's happening. So yeah, that all of that just comes out, and then, you know, I got over, I got over that. Well, I say over it, you don't get over it, but I pulled myself together a bit. And then I'm quite a logical person, Gary. So I then sort of started to think about,
Yeah.
okay, how do I do it? Okay, so what's the best way of doing it, and when do I do it, and this sort of thing. And as I say, at that stage, I still decided not to tell my daughters.
Right.
So
Okay.
I only actually told my daughters once I'd decided what treatment I'd got, and once I was booked in for the surgical removal.
Right. Okay.
Because I then felt like I could give them a positive message that, well, as positive as it could be, that it's all okay. This has happened, but I'm having this, having it removed, and yeah, look,
Yeah.
it's all. So I felt as I could put it in a more positive way. Actually, at that, I decided not to tell my mum at all at that particular stage.
Yeah.
You know, I just decided that wasn't the right thing to do at the time. But with my daughters, I decided to, you know, I didn't want to hide it from them.
That was the same. Yeah.
You know, I always thought to myself, though, I don't want them hiding anything from me. You know, if they were going through something like this, I want them telling me.
Yeah.
So, you know, how can I then hide it from them? You know, so I wanted to be very sort of open and communicate it, and just show them, look, you know, that it's okay to share these things, and let's talk about it. Let's go through it together.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. I mean, talking about the positive side of things, I mean, my urologist consultant, so this was before I saw an oncologist, said, look, you know, I don't want to make light of this, but if you're going to get cancer, this is the very best cancer that you can get. And I thought, that's an interesting way of putting it, but she was making the point, you know, it's early, it's inside the prostate, you've got a lot of treatment options, most of them are curative, and yes, it'll be life-changing, and yes, you'll have to come back every quarter and have a PSA test for the rest of your life, but you know, this has still got a very positive outcome out there. And I realize that many people don't have that if it's caught a little bit later, and it's a lot more urgent and a lot more demanding in terms of treatment. But I feel like she was right in a way. You know, it's a good thing to have caught it so early.
Yeah, and look, you're right, and you know, it sounds ironic, but actually, yeah, if you're going to get cancer, it's like the best one to get, because the cure rate is so high. You know, I can't remember what the stats are now, but you know, it is 90, it's something like 90% plus of men die with prostate cancer, but not because of prostate cancer. So they've actually got it. That you live a perfectly fine life because it's not aggressive and it doesn't spread and that sort of thing. You don't even know that you've got it. So you know, it is very, very common. It's okay. It's not as common for it to get to a point where they're worried about it or it spreads. But
Mm.
yeah, it's and it is very curable, as you say, as long as it's caught sort of early.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess we have to recognise not everyone has the choices that we've had. But so now you're now at the position where you're going to have to go into hospital and have the prostate removed. Were there any considerations around how that was done, or when it was done, or what kind of procedures?
No, so again, I mean, the doctor did sort of say to me, look, we're not in a hurry to do this, which again gave me gave me a bit of peace of mind that like they're not overly worried about it. But actually, things really happened quite quickly for me. So as you know, as I say, if you just quickly going back over that process, it was autumn that it sort of started to happen. PSA test quickly, MRI quickly, biopsy quickly. Confirmed in January, and then the operation was booked in for February.
Wow.
So it was, even though he sort of said, look, it's not in a hurry, it was sort of very, very quick.
Mm.
Look, and actually just going back a second on choosing the, what treatment I wanted, there are potential side effects of every type of treatment. So yeah. So, you do need to sort of take them on board, if you like, in terms of what those potential side effects actually could be and how it could affect you. I did start telling a few more people then, my close friends. I sort of started to tell because for two reasons really. One, because and I told my brother as well, because I wanted to make sure he was getting checked, and he told me that he was getting checked regularly, but I wanted to make sure that he was.
Great shout.
And I told a few of my other close friends as well, again, because I wanted to make sure they were getting checked, but also just to again build a bigger supportive group around me, because that I didn't want it just to be my wife,
No.
I wanted for her and for me, that I could have, there was other people that I could speak to as well, and that she could speak to as well. So, she told a couple of her close friends, so she had that ability to speak to people as well.
I think that's, that is that's a very valid point to say that, sharing the news expands your support network. I've had a few people call me and say, do you want me to come with you for the first radiotherapy appointment? And, we can have a bit of a laugh in the waiting room and this kind of stuff, which is, got to be careful, I guess, with that sort of thing. But the point there was, as I told a few more people, then I just felt like I was able to explain what was happening to me. And, the hormone therapy has been quite impactful on me as it's gone on. So, when people notice the things that are happening to me, they know why that's happening. So I would say there's a definite positive to sharing the news, carefully with the right people to make sure that you've got a little bit of support around you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's look, as they say, it's good to share. So yeah, I think that's important.
Okay, so then you've made a choice. You're going to have the radical prostatectomy. They're going to take the prostate out. I said before it's life-changing, but let's just talk through the process then for that, as you went into hospital to have the operation.
Yeah, so look, obviously it's worrying leading up to that. I don't suppose anybody likes hospitals and that sort of thing, but I'm not a big fan of them, sort of thing. Even though they do an awful lot of good, but it's a mental thing. But yeah, so I went in early one morning, and I found out a bit about it beforehand. Funny enough, actually, one of the people that it was actually through a networking group that I was part of, and actually the person that ran the networking group, can't remember how now. Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's weird how things get around, but anyway, he found out actually what was happening, and it turned out that he had exactly the same operation and the same surgeon had done it for him at the same hospital. Right. So it's quite good to speak to him beforehand. And he was very open and honest with me, and he you know, he didn't sugarcoat it, but you know, he told me, look, just bear in mind this in the future, and this can happen, and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, I was a little bit prepared, but I don't know what you or anybody listening to this knows, but it's, I mean, when I looked into how the removal is done, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. It's done by a robot.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
Yeah.
is phenomenal. They've only got a certain number of them around, you know, around the country. So where I live, the closest one was in Eastbourne. So I went to Eastbourne to have it done. But it's a phenomenal machine when you think about it, because the reason it's done by a robot, you alluded to it earlier, with prostate cancer, the prostate cancer is normally on the very edge of the prostate.
Mm.
So it's not in the middle of the prostate. It's around the edge of it.
Yes.
And then around the outside of the prostate, you've got all other important things.
A web of nerves. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when they're looking to remove the prostate, they've got to be so accurate, because if they don't get it all out, then, as you say, some of it's left in there. And if they go too far, they damage nerves.
Yeah.
So they've got to be so accurate, and hence why they use the robot now. And is that, you know, a robot can be so much more accurate. They could, you know, the hand on the robot can turn, you know, like 360 degrees, you know, whereas like you can't turn your hand more than that, you know, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So and they also do it slightly upside down as well. So you're actually laying slightly upside down, which means that actually it moves a lot of your other sort of organs by gravity out of the way.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting thing, and I found that comfortable to just know a little bit more about what I was going to go through. So yeah, like, just turned up, you know, went to hospital very early on, you know, one morning. For me, I was quite lucky. I was first in. They said to me it could be morning or afternoon. Lucky enough, I got in there and they went, right, let's get you prepped, let's get you in there, which was good for me.
Right.
You know, I'm a bit of a worrier from that sort of thing. And then
everybody was well rested. Everyone had had a cup of coffee. They were quite alert. It was early in the morning. Everyone's on top form. You're not catching them at 6 p.m. when they've had a long day.
Yeah, and hopefully they hadn't been out on the town the night before. So, but yes, and then went you know, actually walked down to the theatre. They, you know, didn't get wheeled down or anything. You know, walked down, went into the, you know, the prep room. They gave me the oh God, what's it called? The thing in the back that well, I can't remember.
The spinal injection.
Yes, spinal injection. Gave me that. Laid down on a bed, and yeah, I was out. Next thing you know, you're lying in your bed in your ward, sort of, you come round again, sort of thing. So and yeah, I mean, you know, I've got to say that, you know, when I came round, I felt relatively okay. You know, obviously, you know.
So it's keyhole surgery. There's only kind of 2 or 3 little mini entry points. It's not like they cut you open or anything.
No, it's all keyhole. I think it's about 6 or 7 holes that they go in. One is slightly bigger than the others because that's where the prostate comes out of when they remove it. So that has to be slightly bigger. So that's sort of by my belly button. And yeah, I mean, let's say mine was in February. Now they've all healed up. Actually, the only one that you can really see that there's anything there is the bigger one. All the others have gone now.
Brilliant.
Can't even see. Yeah, so it's very clever how they actually do it.
And in terms of recovery period, did you have a lot of time off work? Did you have a morning off and then go straight back? What was the
I probably didn't have as much time off as I should have done, to be honest. Yeah, I was back working again probably within a couple of days.
Right. Okay.
Which is good and bad. I mean, and the reason I could do that is because a lot of my work is like we're doing now, sitting in the chair, and just talking to people. Yeah. And I could do that. And to a certain extent, I wanted to do that because I wanted to get back to some sort of normality. So I think if I remember correctly, I think my operation was on a Tuesday. I came out on the Wednesday. then just completely didn't do anything Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the following week sort of started working again, but on on a very low basis. So I was working but wasn't overstretching myself or anything like that.
Yeah. And did you notice any immediate side effects?
No, not really. I mean, at that, I think the only thing, I mean, I was obviously very sort of tender at the time and that sort of thing. I had a catheter in because of the operation, so that stayed in for, well, initially, I think, I can't remember now, but it was about 10 days, I think, initially. Now for me, I had it removed and then had some difficulties and then had to go back and have it put in again. Because whenever I tried to go to the toilet, my bladder went into spasm. Which apparently is extremely unusual. It does happen, but it is unusual. So I had to have that put back in again. But yeah, that was, I guess, it was having that in that made me feel like I'd had an operation, if you see what I mean. Actually, physically, after a short amount of time, I actually felt relatively okay. I mean, I like to keep fit and go to the gym and that sort of thing. And so I did have about 7 weeks off of exercising, but after 7 weeks, I was back at the gym, fully exercising again, and felt absolutely fine.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And so here we are now, what, 6 or 7 months further on?
Yeah.
Anything to report in terms of after effects?
Look, I think the thing to mention is with the with the prostate removal, it's, as you said, look, without going into too much detail here, you've got next to your prostate, you've got 2 sets of nerves, either side, which enable you to get sexually aroused, basically. What they try and do with the when they take out the prostate is to preserve both of those sets of nerves. I've been extremely lucky, and they didn't damage either set.
Wow. That's
so
good.
that was really good. The guy opposite me that had his operation in the afternoon, they managed to preserve one set of his sort of thing. So I've been extremely lucky from that point of view. At the moment, I'm still one side effect. Well, the only side effect really is that I'm still having to control my bladder quite a bit. When I need to go, I need to go. Sort of thing. Less control over it, but I'm doing exercises that will strengthen that over time, and that will just get better and better.
I've just clenched that muscle as you were speaking there.
Yeah, exactly. There's an app that I don't know whether you like called Squeezy.
Squeezy Man,
yeah, exactly. So I've still got that on my phone. It's still reminding me to do those exercises. So and that does, it's like any muscle, it just strengthens over time. But other than that, no side effects. I've gone back, had my first PSA test after removal, and that was below 0.1. So really good, positive, sort of result, which indicates that they did get it all.
Of course.
They were, well, again, just give a bit more information. What they do is when they take the prostate out, they then send it off for analysis.
Oh, didn't know that.
Then you go back to see the doctor, and they tell you where, I don't know how they work it out, but they tell you whether they got it all or not. With me, they said there was a slight marginal bit that they weren't, very, very minor. They weren't 100% sure that they got, but they said that, it was so small that it could even be on the end of the knife or something. It's like, it was that small. but yeah, so my first PSA test is gone down, and I'll just, same as you said, I'll just continue to have those going forward to make sure they got it all. And I think it's similar to you, it's quarterly for about the first year, then it goes down to half yearly, then it'll go down to yearly.
Yeah, and I think that's a strong message. I mean, you're the nerve sparing part of the operation for you, clearly very successful. When I talk about the life-changing impact of prostate cancer, that's what I'm talking about, really. It can change your view of yourself as a man. It can change your sexual performance. It can change the way that whole part of your life works, really. So I guess a lot of people will have to deal with that. But if you get a good surgeon with a good robot, then clearly there's a path out of that doesn't even affect that, which is great.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, I won't go into detail on this podcast, but it removal of the prostate does mean that things change.
Yes.
You have to, that's a mindset thing. You have to get around, you have to get your mind sort of around that. But it's a function. It's not, it's no different or anything like that. So that's more mindset that you have to get your head around. But look, from my point of view, and obviously now I can't have any more children, but I'm 53, very happy with my wife and the family that I've got. I've never planned to have any more, so that's not really a problem for me.
So let's talk. I mean, we're both coaches, so I guess there's a lot of mindset in here. You mentioned it there, and I just think it's a good piece of advice for people. You can go into this with lots of different mindsets. Yours was clearly very positive. And does that strike you as, something that you've been able to maintain all the way through, and that it's helped to keep that kind of positivity?
Yeah, definitely. And I think being a coach has helped that from that point of view, because as you know, we talk a lot about that. We talked a lot about that. We talk to each other about that. So it is all about positivity, and the way I went into it in a very positive way, in terms of that this could be worse. I've been diagnosed early. There's a good a cure rate for it. It could be worse. Then you do think about a lot of other people out there that are a whole lot worse off, and you've got to look at it from a positive point of view. So that was important. And look, I'm not sitting here holding my hands up and saying, I was always positive and I never got down or anything like that. Of course I did. We all do. But you just have to try and change that round and think positively about things.
But then again, you make
the other thing that you mentioned there, Gary, is look, sometimes you've got to have a bit of a laugh about it as well. It's like, it's a serious subject, but with your mates, you can have a bit of a laugh, have a bit of a joke about it, because that helps as well.
And I think it's also important to acknowledge, as you just said there, that there'll be good days and bad. And even if you are the most positive person, I consider myself to be very positive in that sense. I'm looking at a positive outcome for myself. There'll still be days when you really feel to yourself, I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out. I'm not really sure what will happen to me afterwards. It will change my life, but I'm not really sure how. Those days, that it's okay to have those days. It's important to acknowledge them and take whatever time and rest you need as a consequence of that. So, but I'm with you. Let's keep it positive. So, any final tips as we finish off, Simon, just for people who are going through the journey? Anything that you would say to people based on your experience about how to get through it?
I think stay positive is one of them. Easy thing to say is it can be harder to do, but as much as you can to stay positive. Surround yourself by supportive people, whoever that may be, friends, families, people that are your family, people that have gone through it before. Speak to people, reach out to people, because there's loads of people out there that have gone through it, and there's loads and loads of support out there as well. Prostate cancer, UK, and all these type of things, and they're there to help. And I've got to say, the support that I got from you know, the hospital and other organisations that you get put in contact with was second to none. It's brilliant, you know, fantastic. You know, helplines that you can call afterwards, just to, you know, oh, this is happening, is that normal, and you know, just really, really good. So make sure, yeah, sort of take advantage of that as well. But that would be the main.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, let me add one more that I think has been helpful for me, and that was, you know, as soon as I started to get the sense that something wasn't quite right, you know, spend some time educating yourself.
Yeah.
And because you can go onto YouTube, which is odd because people will be watching this on YouTube, but you can go onto YouTube and you can see some real horror stories and get some really bad advice and information. And I think the more you educate yourself, the more you read about the disease, the more you read about the treatments and the outcomes, the more understanding you've got, the more relaxed you'll be about what your options are, and you'll make the right choices because you've spent that time kind of boning up on, you know, what's important for you and for the disease.
Yeah, look, and I think that links with being positive, because, you know, you can go online and you can look for horror stories.
Yeah.
And there are horror stories out there. Or you can go online and look for actually people that have had positive experiences and been cured, and what things actually mean. So yeah, I definitely sort of say, yeah, go online, find out more things about it. But yeah, go online with a positive view, looking for the positive things that are on there, and make sure you look at the, you know, like the websites like, you know, Prostate Cancer UK and those sort of things that are have got factual information about what it means. They've been designed in a certain way, they communicate things in a certain way, in a sensible way, rather than just some of this gossip that you might sort of see online if you know, so yeah, no, I think that's educate yourself on it as well, because it's there's some really comforting stuff out there, people that have gone through it and been there and are okay. I mean, you know, just to add to this, I mean, you know, I had my operation in February, and then in beginning of July, you know, I was doing a 16-mile run, you know, and actually to raise money for Prostate Cancer UK. So, you know, going from being diagnosed in, you know, in autumn last year, and all through that operation in February, and then being able to, you know, to run sort of that 16 miles in July, and I'm living a normal life, very happy. You know, my children, they know I've been through it. They're comfortable with everything, understanding it, everything. By the way, one of my daughters, she didn't like the word cancer, so we decided we were going to call it sprinkles instead. So
sprinkles.
So that was the terminology, sprinkles. I've now told my mum, you know, because again, I felt as though I could tell her positively, and say, look, mum, just to let you know, I've had the operation, I've had this done, it's all fine. So yeah, so, you know, and as far as I'm concerned, that's it, all behind me now.
Move on.
And yeah, regular checks just in case, but I see that as a positive thing. I'm being checked more than most people are.
That's true. So, and that's a very positive set of notes to finish on, sprinkles, and you know, feeling like it's something that's now behind you. So first of all, again, thank you for your honesty, for sharing for me on FYPC, Simon, and I'm really grateful that other people will take a lot of comfort from what you've said, and a lot of guidance. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it, Gary. Thank you.